Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will be solving another SQL problem. Problem number 1661, average time of process per machine. Let's take a look at the problem statement. We are given a table called activity, which is consisted of 4 columns: machine ID, process ID, activity type, and timestamp. The combination of columns machine ID, process ID, and activity type is the primary key. Machine ID is the ID of a machine. Process ID is the ID of a process running on the machine. Activity type is of an enum data type, has the value of start and end. Timestamp is a float representing the current time in seconds. Activity type start means the machine starts the process. End means the machine ends at the process. The start timestamp will always be before the end timestamp for every machine ID and process ID pair. Alright, so our task is to find the average time each machine takes to complete a process. The time to complete a process is the end time minus start time. The average time is calculated by the total time to complete every process on the machine divided by the number of processes that will run. Alright, the result table should have the machine ID along with average time as processing time, which should be rounded to 3 decimal places. Let's take a look at the example. So here we have the activity table. Machine ID number 0 has 2 process IDs, and each process ID has its own start and end timestamp. Alright, same with machine ID number 1. This machine ID has 2 process IDs, 0 and 1, and each process ID has its own start and end. Similarly with machine ID number 2. So the output, we should see 2 columns, machine ID and processing time. Processing time would be the average time each machine ID takes to complete their process. So let's read the explanation. So there are 3 machines running 2 processes each. Machine ID number 0, 1, and 2, and running 2 processes each. Processes 0 and 1, processes 0 and 1, 0 and 1. So machine number 0's average time is of the process ID number 0 n minus start plus process ID number 1 n minus start. The sum of these two divided by 2 will be the average time for machine ID number 0. And it's the same for other machine IDs. Alright, so let's solve the problem. Alright, so this is a self-join situation. And if you're not familiar with self-join in SQL, I would recommend you read some articles explaining self-join concept. So self-join is commonly used in the cases when there's a relationship, hierarchical relationship or sequential relationship. So in this case, it's a hierarchical relationship, meaning there is a parent-child relationship in this data. So for example, this machine ID number 0 has 2 process IDs, 0 and 1, and each process ID has his own activity type, start and end, So this is the parent-child relationship. That's why for this problem, it's going to be a self-join situation where you are going to join to itself and to get the start and end of each process IDs, and we'll get the average processing time of each machine ID. So my goal now is to get for each machine ID, there will be 2 rows, one for process ID 0 and another one is for process ID 1, with the for each row of machine ID 0, process ID 0, I will have the end time, start time, and the processing time will be the end minus start. Same for machine ID number 0. For process ID number 1, I will also have end time, start time, and processing time, which is the end minus start. So in the next step, I want to create this table. This is the result of the self-join of the activity table. We'll be joining on machine ID, process ID, and we will get the column end time where the activity type equal to end, and start time where activity type equal to start, and the processing time will be equal to end time minus start time. So once we have this table, we can get the average processing time for each machine ID by getting the sum of the processing time of process ID number 0 and processing time of the process ID number 1 divided by 2. Alright, so let's create the table that I just showed you, this table. Alright, so gonna do select, we want to see the machine ID, process ID, timestamp, but we want to see the end timestamp, so same as end. So because this, I will call it end table. And start timestamp as start. So I'm gonna do from. So in the self-join, the to table, you always have to give an alias to the table you join into itself. So it's gonna be from activity, I will call it end, join with activity start, call it start, on, I'm gonna join on end machine ID equal to start machine ID and dot process ID equal to start dot process ID. And I mentioned earlier we want to get the end time in the end table, and dot activity type equal to end, and start dot activity type equal to start. So let's take a look now and see what we have. Our machine ID. Okay, so we have to give this an alias because we have machine ID in both tables. So it's gonna do end. Okay. Alright, as you can see, now I'm having machine ID and process ID for each of them, the end and start. So now we're gonna add a processing time where the equal to n minus start. So in order to do that, we're gonna add another column called processing time where n dot timestamp minus to start dot timestamp as processing time. Let's run that. Right, so we should see this is the table that I showed you earlier. So this is, we have machine ID, process ID, and start and processing time. So this is the table that we will be working with. We will get the average by getting the sum of this one and divided by 2. So in order to do that, we are going to select, so we need to have machine ID, so to get the average, it's gonna be average function. It's and we call this, select this from, we will call this table time. For example, you can name it whatever you want. Go to time, so it's gonna be time dot processing time. You can either do this way and then group by machine ID, or you can just do the sum, the sum of these two and divided by 2. But I figure we can do average and group by machine ID. This way we don't have to write a long code. So average time, processing time, and we want to get the result rounded to 3 decimal place. So I'm gonna do round. Well, let's run this first and see what it looks like as processing time, and I'm gonna group by machine ID, group by group by time, machine ID. All right, so you can see here we have this is the average processing time of each machine ID, and we need to we have to round it to 3 decimal places. So it's going to be round 3 decimal places. It's going to be 3. Let's run that. All right, looks good. Let's submit this. All right, runtime 349 milliseconds, beats 94.32% of users with MySQL. So that is it for today. Thank you for watching. I see you in another video.